Hi there and welcome to my channel, and first a big thank you for subscribing and following along. I started this channel back in 2023 with the goal and mission to just share some of what I've learned in the past 2+ decades I've been in the menswear industry. Those are things from styling suits to fabric explanations to how trousers or clothing should fit, to even some clothing care tutorials and the occasional vlog here and there. Ultimately, I just want to share what I've learned on my menswear journey, and through that trial and error might help you guys out on the way. In today's video, I'm going to give you guys a little bit deeper introduction of myself, and I'm going to go over a list of some of the most frequently asked questions I receive. Before that, I do want to give you guys a sincere thank you. I was really a bit nervous about starting a YouTube channel because, let's be honest, people can be a little bit mean online. But to my surprise and delight, you guys have been nothing but supportive and constructive with your comments, and it's been a lot of fun joining this community and creating content for you guys and just sharing a little bit of what I know. By the channel name, you guys already know my name, Justin Kwan. I grew up in Minnesota in the US, and I am the middle child with 2 brothers. My dad is Chinese and my mom is American of European descent, and that answers a common question I get now, so you know I'm mixed. I went to the Carlson School of Management at the University of Minnesota, and my original major was marketing. And I remember when I was studying, I was abroad in Sweden my junior year. And my university launched a new program called the Entrepreneurial Management Major. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to sign up for that. So this is one important thing about me, that I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. One thing that kind of led me to where I am today is my dad is Chinese, and I wanted to learn Chinese. So I remember very clearly my freshman year of university, I also took Chinese courses because I never had the chance to learn growing up. It was super intensive. I had 7 classes a week. So that was in 5 days, Monday through Friday. There were 7 courses, and it was just really, really intensive. And I remember at that time, my academic advisor, Annie, shout out to you, who was actually of Taiwanese descent, she told me, Justin, drop it. Don't study Chinese right now. It's too intensive. Just go to China after you graduate. So she kind of planted that seed in my head, and I didn't want to say I was a quitter, but I did drop Chinese after my freshman year so I could focus a little bit more on my major curriculum. And I did come out here after all. I think one of the things in the early 2000s that was probably very pivotal for me was how booming China was. And I just really wanted to come here. And it was very easy after I graduated. I said, okay, after I graduate, I'm going to go to China, because I had a couple really good reasons to do that. I mean, one was I wanted to learn Chinese, as I mentioned. I also wanted to start my own business. And I had this idea of starting my own clothing brand, or actually, to be honest, at the time, I didn't even think about starting my own brand. But I thought, I'm going to go and explore clothing manufacturing. And another thing was, I just absolutely love traveling. So I kind of had like 3 birds with 1 stone. There's probably more excuses, but I just literally came out here on a one-way ticket back in 2007. Now, there's a little bit of a long story and a short story of how I am here today, but I think that leads into it. One of the most pivotal things for me, I think, was being here in those, I would say in the first few years of being in China. I studied at a language program called BLCU. I had an amazing time, and I met people from all over the world. I also met with local people, and it was just a very vibrant time, and something that really resonated with me. And it's meeting people from all over the place, having different conversations and having different perspectives. And I think that's another reason I really like doing YouTube, because it's actually very broad in terms of where you guys are from. I have people commenting who are from Australia, the US, Europe, Quebec, all over the place. And I think it's really nice and really interesting. And throughout this video, I mean, if you guys want to share where you're from or where you're watching, do let me know. I like to know that and maybe build out the community more. I think one of the really interesting times, I guess, early on here, and something else about me, is I actually met my wife in the early years. I think it was in 2008. Well, I know it was in 2008. It was the second year I was here in China, and I met her. And she's from South Korea. And I think one of the interesting things is, there was a real true love at first sight. Now, at that time, and looking back, I never thought I would have been married literally a few days before my 28th birthday. Looking back, I feel like I was quite young, but when you know, right? So that's a little bit about me and my personal life. And maybe I can steer that into another common question I get and tell me, what is Principle M? Because that's why I'm here. It's the brand I started. I started this brand in 2013 officially, but for the years previous to that, I was actually also working on figuring out what I like and don't like about clothing and manufacturing, coming from what I'm offering now, and that's bespoke. And having a bespoke garment, there's just something a little bit more artistic about that process, the creativity, being able to see it come together. And this is something I really, really love and really, really enjoy. And it's just been kind of like, I would say, like a passion and a lifelong goal to be able to offer that and have the artisans here in the shop, like here at Principle M. This is a retail space as much as it is a tailor's workshop, as it is a creating space for you guys. We do all of our content here as well. So that's a little bit of a background information about Principle M and kind of that progression, a little bit like a menswear journey. You know, you learn a lot of things along the way, and that's what I did with Principle M. I started off only offering made to measure, and I think in about 2018 and 19, we finally were able to launch our Bespoke line. And right around that same time, we offered some ready to wear. So it's a little bit of everything that you see. I'm sure if you guys watch my channel, you're somewhat familiar with the style of the clothing and what we're making and doing.
Why do you like to dress in suits or jackets?
I like to dress in suits and jackets most, just because it's what I feel most comfortable in. When I say comfortable, I mean I'm physically comfortable, but also I guess a little bit of like psychologically comfortable. Like my mind can be at ease because I feel confident when I dress in a suit. I feel like I look good in a suit, and I think that is important when going out and seeing other people. It's suitable for my lifestyle. For example, I work in a suit shop. So, you know, I mean, it's pretty suitable to be wearing a suit or jacket here. Not to mention I have access to it. The other thing, I mean, I will say something about comfort, because some people will say it doesn't look comfortable. And this is something like, if the jacket is tight, yeah, it's going to be uncomfortable. So it shouldn't be tight on you. So that's why I have a little bit more of a fuller, broader shoulder, a slightly more drapey or relaxed cut, and it's what I like. There's also fine tuning to be done. If I want a very formal tuxedo or look like that, I might go a little bit more structured and a little bit more shape in the jacket. And another thing is something I get a lot is like my trousers, I feel, are also very, very comfortable. They're at like, I would call it a natural waist, which is probably just like known as a mid to high rise trouser. The rise goes just below my belly button. And when I'm walking around in a slightly fuller cut trouser, I do think they're comfortable. So if I'm sitting down or bending my knees, or I have to bend or a little, something like that, it's not restrictive whatsoever or tight. And when you're looking at me at the front, it also has a very nice trouser crease. On the sides though, people will say, oh, behind my leg, there's too much fabric. And I think this is a little bit subjective, depending on person to person of what you like. And for me, because I know in terms of tailoring a trouser, when you're looking at me and I'm shaking your hand and I'm talking to you, you will only see the front of the trouser crease. So over the years, I've gone a little bit wider and a little bit wider. Now, not Askoki wide, but a little bit wider in terms of my trouser cut. And I think it's really comfortable, you know, and it still objectively looks nice.
To explain, how did you get into the business of tailoring?
So how I got into the business of tailoring and this brand Principle M, oh man, that's a loaded question. And there's a long story and a short story, and let's try to give you the medium story. I worked part-time in university at Macy's, and I was working in the men's department. So I had a lot of exposure to the suits, to chinos, to casual, sort of semi-formal wear. And I just got used to seeing that, and I liked it. I started wearing jackets when I was in university. I would call it somewhat early exposure. I mean, I know some people out there started wearing it when they were much younger. But because I had that exposure to it and I liked it instantaneously, I felt like this makes me feel good. The jacket is super functional. Like another thing I didn't mention earlier was the pockets. And at that time, everybody's carrying a cell phone around, and I like to put it in my breast pocket. I don't like putting things in my trouser pockets. And it was just real nice. Like it completed the look. So because I had that exposure and I knew I wanted to start my own business of some sort, and I knew I wanted to learn Chinese, I thought, why don't I go to China and kind of explore some opportunities. And now, a little disclaimer is prior to moving out here, I actually visited China twice before. So once in 2000 and then a second time in 2005. And I remember the time in 2005 when I went, I was already in university and I was in my entrepreneurial management classes and we're trying to start a business in university. And it made me think a little bit about these tailored suits that I made in China. Now, I call these ones the quick and dirty suits because that's literally what they are. They're made quick, dirty, and cheap at the silk market. And call me guilty as is, but I did make some of those as a tourist here, as most traveling Americans have that idea to make those. And it was a little bit gimmicky, but the process was really cool. I chose the fabric. I had it in a little bit more of a tailored cut at that time. This was early 2000s. So everything was very boxy. So these were a little bit more tailored and fit. And I remember wearing these suits at business pitches and presentations in university. And people said, Justin, where'd you get that suit? It's really nice. It fits great and all that. And I said, hey, it was tailor-made in China. And they said, wow, how much was it? And I thought, how much would you pay? And then the entrepreneurial mind in me said, okay, here's how much they're going to pay, and here's how much I paid for it. And I realized, hey, maybe there's a business opportunity here. So that got me thinking in university about trying to explore tailors or clothing here in China to sort of develop and build out my own business. When I first came to China, though, I wasn't specifically looking for just tailored suits, though. I was kind of a little bit broader in terms of like clothing manufacturing, sourcing. I did a little bit of freelance work for some other brands and some other people that wanted to source garments here in China. And ultimately, I realized, okay, I like shirts, I like suits, I like jackets. And I essentially started a brand. And the way I started my brand, and this is kind of an interesting story about the beginning, and I think this was the most pivotal point in one of the tests that I faced then and that I continuously face today. And it was a challenge. And I ran a Kickstarter of my own. And what I call my Kickstarter is I had found some tailors here and I worked with them and made some garments for myself. I put together some fabric books. And I went back to the US and I found some friends and family and I said to them, hey guys, why don't you buy a suit? I'll do your measurements, I'll design it for you, and then I'll ship it back. We'll tailor it, make it here. So that's essentially what I did. And I think this was back in the beginning of 2009. I sort of pre-sold during my Kickstarter campaign around $10,000 to $15,000 worth of suits. So as a true entrepreneur, I brought that back here. I got my flight back here, and I made those garments and I sent them back to my friends and family. Great, it felt so cool because now instead of just making things for myself, I was making it for you guys out there. And the creation, the designing, the putting it together. I even remember some of the guys made like, a suit with extra trousers and some shirts, and I even had a mannequin, and me and my other friend put them on the mannequin and took photos of everything. And I remember because my fingers hurt so badly from buttoning and unbuttoning so many shirts that night I should say, and taking the photos. It'd be kind of funny if I saw those and the quality of what we did then and what we're doing today, but it's all the progression, right? Learning along the way. And I sent those clothing back to the friends and family back home, and a little bit of time had passed, a week or two, they should have received it, and then all of a sudden I started getting emails. Oh great, an email. Click on that email. Hey Justin, there's some problems. Another one, hey Justin, this shirt doesn't quite fit right, or this suit doesn't fit. And there were small little issues with a little bit of fit issues, and these were problems I had to solve. And if you're creating something and building something for the first time, and if you're trying to start a business, no matter what it is, it's tough getting that feedback, that constructive criticism, or when you think you build something out and it's great and they're going to love it, but you find out that they're not very happy or satisfied. Or even just in the email alone, maybe there's no tone in email. It's not like, hey Justin, there's a little problem with the fit. Hey Justin, there's a little problem with the fit, right? So it's a little bit hard to tell what they mean. And I think I'm a little bit of a person that is a little bit needy or wants to have people's approval. I want to please you guys with your clothing and what I'm doing and creating. So that was really, really hard to take that feedback. And it tested me in my limits of what I'm able to do. And I think this is one thing that I overcame it. I found out some creative solutions in order how to fix it. On some of them I just remade it. On some of them, I helped them find a local tailor to make some adjustments. So these are all things I had to do, learning process along the way. And luckily, it was like friends and family. So of course, they weren't too angry or mad at me. And since then, back in 2009, up until now, I mean, that's another 15 plus years of sort of figuring out how to do this properly and how to do it better. And you know, most of our customers that are here locally in Beijing, they can come here, or even the customers that are abroad, there's like the virtual fitting and trial garments that we do to sort of shield ourselves from any big surprises when your clothing comes. But I think that was probably one of the most fundamental things in terms of like building this business of tailoring that I'm in. And to get to where I am today, maybe we'll save a little bit more of that for another time, because I know it's a very long-winded question.
So Justin, what's your current favorite suit?
My current favorite suit, that's very, very difficult to answer because it really depends on so many things like mood, weather. Weather being a big one, I would say. Let me give you two answers, one for spring, summer, and one for fall, winter. I think my current favorite full suit for spring, summer is definitely Escorial. This fabric is just very, very special in terms of like the springiness and the lightness of it. I think the one I use to make my navy suit is 250 or 260 grams, so it's very light. It is a high twist, and it's just got this, the Escorial wool is part of the Spanish royal flock, and it has the most curly fibers of all, so they just spring back into shape. So it has a very beautiful, clean drape for such a light fabric, and it's very breathable. My favorite suit for fall, winter, I think I'm gonna have to go with my brown Loro Piana flannel, and it's got 5% cashmere in it. And one of the reasons I like it is, I mean, some years I like a little bit heavier, more robust flannel, but over the years I've realized that it can be a little bit too heavy indoors in Beijing because we have such strong like radiators and heaters here that indoors in the winter it's really warm, but then when you go outside it's super cold and we get strong wind here. So the Loro Piana flannel with 5% cashmere at 320 grams is probably one of my favorite for fall, winter. The other reason that one is because it's a brown tone. Whether it's the full suit or if I'm breaking it up and wearing the jacket separately, I feel like I get a lot of use out of that.
So the next question would be, do you have a personal pocket preference?
Yeah, that was a good question from one of you guys on YouTube. You asked about pocket preferences on jackets, jetted, flaps, or patches. And I think this leads into a really good point about I almost go directly into it. So if it's a full suit, I will almost go jetted with flaps. Just because the flaps, you can also tuck into the pocket and it looks like it's just a jetted pocket if you want a more clean look. And if you like the flap, you can pull them out. And then if I am making a more of a, I would say a casual jacket, maybe a tweed jacket, for example, or maybe some softer jacketing material. Like I know some of you might know I'm a big fan of the Harrison's Moonbeam. It's a very, very soft wool and Angora blend. I'll do patch pockets on that just because it's a little bit more of a relaxed look. It's a relaxed feel, and patch pockets kind of give that jacket a little bit more of a casual vibe. Whereas I have done full suits with patch pockets just to toy around, but I feel like now I would only do almost jetted or flat pockets on a full suit. And I can still get away with wearing that jacket separately. And I would almost exclusively do patch pockets on a more casual jacket. But with that being said, on casual jackets, sometimes I might also just do jetted with flaps.
What's towards ticket pockets in a jacket?
And in terms of ticket pockets, I think some people just always do a ticket pocket because it's what they've always done and they enjoy that and like it. And I feel like it's a little bit more of a sporty thing. Sometimes, like if you do like slanted pockets, a little bit more of a relaxed jacket, it's kind of cool, but also in a very dressed up formal suit with a ticket pocket, it just feels like a little bit more boss. But I look at it a little bit more from an angle of, usually most of the time a customer comes in here and I ask, would you like to add a ticket pocket? And they're like, I don't know, should I? You know, even when it comes to pockets, it was like, do you want patch pockets or jetted pockets? They're like, I don't know, Justin, what do you think? With that extra ticket pocket on the side, sometimes like if a gentleman has a longer torso or if he's taller, there's a lot more fabric or front, I could say square inches on the front of the jacket. So if that's the case, maybe you can break it up a little bit and add a little bit more of a point of interest with a ticket pocket. If you're a bit of a shorter gentleman, I don't want to compact too much into the whole jacket. So that's why I might not do a ticket pocket. And again, if it's just a personal preference, go for it.
All right, so do you have a fall and winter dress up by Sports Sweaty Dudes?
Yeah, this was another guy on YouTube that asked the question, if you have let's say it's winter, it's very cold climate, but when you go indoors, you get really hot because the heating is good, and that's kind of what I mentioned before. I think in that case, again, it's if you like wearing winter flannels, maybe instead of going with like a 340 plus gram winter flannel, keep it a little bit lower at like 320 or under. And I think that would just be sufficient for you. Or if you are a hot, warm body, go with like a 3-season or a 3 or 4-season fabric. And I think one of the best ones for that would be, I would say, a plain weave in 310 grams. Not too high twist kind of plain weave, but just a normal plain weave. If you hold it up to light, you can sort of see a little bit of light coming through. It's not completely dense, so that way it's a little bit breathable. So that will help kind of regulate your body heat and warmth indoors, outdoors, whether it's hot outside or cold outside. And then if it is the winter time and it's super cold, I bet you're gonna throw on, no, not the down coat, the overcoat. You'll throw on a nice overcoat over it. So that overcoat will just wrap you up like a big warm blanket. You know, you can put a scarf on to keep the cold out. And I think that would probably be the best solution. And the other thing is nowadays, depending on your work environment, if you do get a little bit warm indoors, I mean, the nice thing about a jacket, it's really easy to take off and throw over the back of your chair or hanger. And it's really easy to throw back on if you're cold. So it can help regulate yourself by doing that as well.
Please choose one bunch for each. One bunch for spring and summer, fall and winter, and the first season.
Okay. So one fabric bunch I would recommend for 4-season first, I would say, without a doubt, Harrison's Frontier. It's 300 grams, 11 ounces, and there's just a very, very wide selection of colors and patterns, whether you want something slightly fancy or something a little bit more conservative. And it's quite nice, especially for like, you know, an English fabric book, because English fabric is known to be a little bit more conservative with their color selections. For spring and summer, spring and summer is super tough. I think for spring and summer, one of my top recommendations, I mean, I'll go with what my favorite suit is, and that's the Escorial again. Again, it's super springy, so it's very crease resistant. It was 250 grams. They do have a different selection or range of weights in that book. But it's got this amazing natural stretch. I don't think I mentioned that earlier. It's got this amazing natural stretch, so it's very comfortable. Because for me, I have a little bit of a broad back, and I kind of start stooping throughout the day. And I want it to be very comfortable across the back. And I know if you have a rigid fabric, it reminds you to sit straight and sit up, which is really good. Escorial tends to be on like the higher range in terms of prices. If I weren't to go with that, I would definitely go with probably a high twist around 310 to 320 grams. Or let's say 300 grams, you know, more or less. If it's 280 to 320, I think, in a high twist. My only thing about a high twist though is it can be dense. So if it does have a little bit of a natural stretch, I think that's a huge added benefit because you get that crease resistance plus natural stretch. If I were to look in my closet and see like where are most of my jackets or suits from, come fall winter, I continuously go back to Harrison's Moonbeam for a jacket. It's 320 grams, which is really, really light. And I don't remember the exact percentage of composition. I think it's 75 wool, 25 Angora. And it's a really interesting blend because Angora is like a hollow fiber, which creates a very, very light fiber and also very insulating fiber. So for only being 320 grams, this actually keeps you very, very warm at a very, very light weight. And yeah, I think that one I've got like a green one I made with B & Taylor. I've got like a light gray herringbone. I made a navy blazer. So that's probably one of my top recommendations for fall winter. I think for a fall winter suit recommendation, I might even go with what I'm wearing right now. This is from the Hardy Minis Classics Suiting. and I believe it's 350 grams, which I think is a very nice kind of sturdy weight. It feels very, I mean, rigid, but not overly rigid or dense. Or sorry, it is dense, but just not overly rigid where it's uncomfortable. It has amazing drape. It's kind of got warming characteristics, and this is a suit I'll sort of take out come mid-fall and wear it all the way through mid-spring. So it does have a pretty long, I would say, wearability. And again, in Beijing, you have kind of mild autumn, very cold winter, and again, spring is a little bit mild as well.
If you can only choose one, would you choose velvet, Beretta, or three-piece?
So if it's a formal occasion, in my mind, that means black tie. That means I have an option of wearing a velvet jacket or like a tuxedo. And again, I think I would go with my tuxedo right now. I mean, also there's the option of like a white dinner jacket. But right now, in my mind, I would go with a tuxedo, Beretta. Only because I recently made another tuxedo. And this might be my last tuxedo I ever make. It's a very interesting fabric from Dorme. And the Beretta, I mean, Beretta is meant to be a little bit soft. For me, it almost feels like sweatpants type of material, but it's not. It's not like a jersey or the knit, but I mean, that's kind of a little bit the way the fabric behaves. It's a very soft fabric while being dense and holding the shape really, really well. And yeah, I would definitely go with a tuxedo.
Nice. What are some of the things you wish you knew earlier?
Some of the things I wish I knew earlier. I'm gonna have to say never. A lot of times when you start wearing classical menswear, you tend to follow these very rigid rules, and then they get so like it's got such a deep impact in my mind that I only do that or I only wear that, and I stick with this one route. And maybe that's fine for some of you, but part of that is, I mean, my style in terms of my fit has changed over the last 15 years. 15 years ago when I was younger, I kind of wanted something a little bit slimmer, a little bit trimmer. Maybe I was slimmer and trimmer back then, but that's a little bit what I wanted then. And I still have one suit in my closet from when I first started, before I started Principal M. It was a business I started prior to that. And it's very, very slim, very, very trim and shorter. And this is a style that a lot of guys out there still really, really like today. But through the progression of being in this menswear journey, I've been making like different suits over and over again and having different tweaks here and there and trying to find the perfect like aesthetic for my physique and my body that makes me objectively look a little bit better somehow and also feels comfortable. I mean, I've kind of come to where I am today. And like the whole thing about, so never say never, saying like, never say you'd never wear like a high-rise trouser that's a fuller cut. I mean, in fact, if you're a millennial and you're watching this, we sort of got a little bit messed up, I would say, seeing our father's generation wearing very like baggy Dockers that lacked shape, that had pleats. That's what we grew up thinking and seeing. And that's a little bit of a problem, I would say, because we don't want to wear trousers that are high-rise with pleats because you think of those Dockers. But no, I mean, if I look at the chinos that we make and the cut, it's actually very pleasing and kind of creates a slimming silhouette. Whereas those low rises that we were kind of brainwashed into with Britney Spears and other people in the early 2000s was like, it's just exposing a lot. And I feel like there's nothing nice or beautiful about that. Like aesthetically, what looks nice? And that's what I'm trying to achieve. And, you know, had I said, no, I'm never going to try those, like I wouldn't be where I am today, right? I wouldn't have gone through this progression to finding, okay, I like a high-rise trouser with pleats, with a full cut. Which, by the way, I heard, this was an opinion piece my older brother shared with me. That was, I think, on the Wall Street Journal, but it says Gen Zers, so that's also some of you out there, have gone straight to a high-rise fuller cut trouser, which is pretty cool. So they got to skip all that other stuff us millennials kind of got mixed up with in the early 2000s.
You just mentioned that your style has been changing over the years. Would you like to elaborate more about this aspect?
Right, so I talked a little bit about that in the last question, like how my style has changed over the years and elaborating on that. And I think one of the biggest things with that is just, it's about fine-tuning the aesthetic and That's one. And the other one is like finding that balance with comfort. And if I look back to like suits I was wearing 10 or 15 years ago, I think it was lacking a little bit of comfort. I think the aesthetic was okay at the time, and given my age, but really, I mean, right now, I mean, different things have changed. Like my jackets have gotten longer, and they've gotten a little bit looser. And some of you guys on YouTube have noticed that. And on some other videos, like the jacket fit video, there's other people that came on there saying, okay, that jacket's too loose, it's too baggy, whereas the other one looks good. And so everyone has a little bit their own like opinion or idea of what works best for them or what they like. But I'm gonna go out on a limb right here and say, objectively speaking, the fit I have right now took me a long time to figure out, to progress to this. And I think it's right. There might be some people that will disagree, but I doubt I got this far into this video. And those of you that are watching probably understand or think a little bit like me. And I mean, the reason is like, if it does look broader on the shoulder, one of the reasons for that is I want to try to achieve a triangle, like an inverted triangle. So it's broader at the shoulder, broad at the chest, and sort of nipped in at the waist and the hips. So if you can do that, you will objectively look stronger and broader up top and create a little bit more of a waisted silhouette. And you don't need the suit to be tight in the waist to achieve that with the construction and the canvassing of the jacket. So I would say that changed over time, and it took me a little bit of trial and error to figure that out. And the other thing is, like I just mentioned, was the trousers. Like having a high-rise, fuller cut trouser just feels more comfortable and it looks better. Like one thing that, I'm not a massive perfectionist, but one thing that really bugs me is like if you're wearing a jacket and a trouser, and if your trousers are too low, and then if you button the jacket and you see that little triangle of shirt between the trousers and the jacket, that really, really bugs me. So that's my thing that bugs me. I bet you guys all have one little thing that bugs you. Like it could be a collar gap on somebody or a chest gap. Maybe the sleeves are ever so short or long, and that might be that one thing that bugs you. But for me, it's that little triangle between the trousers and the buttoning position. And when you have a high-rise trouser, that almost addresses the problem immediately. And you do have to have a slightly longer jacket. I shouldn't say slightly longer. I should say the proper length jacket, where it just covers your hips and goes down to your front crotch point. And I think that is something that creates that beautiful line, a clean line from head to toe. And it's just uninterrupted. And that's definitely where I am today in terms of that. And now the one thing I do want to say is I would love to look back at this video in another 2 or 3 years or 5 years and see where's my style and what is the aesthetic then and what have I learned in this time period. So it's interesting, you know, I'm continuously open to learning new things, and I'm very curious. So I'll see you later.
So the next question will be Bespoke or MTM? Which do you recommend?
One of the most frequently asked questions is this question of Bespoke or MTM, which do I recommend? And the short answer is it depends. It depends a little bit on, do you have access to Bespoke? It also depends on, do you have, I guess, the budget? Bespoke is typically more expensive than made to measure. And those are two of the biggest things about whether to go for Bespoke or not. Because, you know, if you have the means to get it, go for it and start with that. Another thing that kind of affects it is your time frame, because Bespoke is always also going to take longer to make. So if you're on a little bit of a budget, you want something a little bit quicker, I would say made to measure. Also, like the procedures are a little bit different, right? With made to measure, it's a trial garment, and then usually electronically nowadays, your pattern is made and then printed via a computer printer CAD. So your pattern is going to be on file for now and ever. Like, so if you want to remake something, it's a very simple process and procedure and relatively quick. Whereas with Bespoke, one of the things I like most about doing Bespoke is the fittings, because from fabric to fabric, if I make a very, very light 250 gram fabric Bespoke, and on that same pattern and cut, make a heavy winter weight fabric, during that first fitting, they're going to feel very different. And that's similar with made to measure. Like with a more robust, thick fabric, it might feel a little bit, I guess, a little bit closer fitting. And if you use that exact same made to measure pattern and use a very, very light fabric, that lighter fabric, when it's made up, it's going to feel slightly more relaxed. So it depends on you, you know, give them both a try.
What was your motivation behind starting Principal M, and what does it mean?
Principal M, I talked a lot about Principal M and where we are today, so I think a lot of the motivation behind it is there. It's just really, there's so much creativity in what we're doing, and we're serving you guys, and that gives me a lot of, I mean, it gives me a great sense of like a feeling of being, or really giving back to society or helping out. And I think that's something that, you know, us humans just need to feel like we're doing something. And I did that with clothing and styling and knowing and understanding fabrics and putting together the team of tailors here. And Principal M, it doesn't really mean a whole lot. I mean, principle, I like that word. It feels very strong, and us men have our dressing principles. So that was one of the reasons I chose that word. And I added an M just because of menswear. Maybe early on it was maybe made to measure. It could be anything really, but it wasn't anything specific. I just thought it sounded cool as a brand together.
So the last question will be navy or gray?
Navy or gray suit? That's a very tough question. For the first 8 or 9 years, and I would almost say pre-pandemic, I always recommended a navy suit for first-time comers or people looking for a suit that didn't have navy. And there were a lot of reasons on my mind for that. One was you can break up the jacket and wear it separately with chinos and have a whole nother look. Or you can have the full navy suit, a white shirt and a tie, and you're looking formal for a day at work. But my idea on this has changed a little bit recently, because I feel like when people come in here and want a formal suit, whether it's for an interview or for work or an event, I feel like actually a dark gray or charcoal suit almost fits the bill better. Because I don't think that guy is really looking for a suit that he can break up for other events, because a charcoal suit is a little bit more difficult, I would say, to break up than a navy. So I would probably go with charcoal. And I think right now, I don't know, I like a little bit more the monochromatic color schematic, right? If you're using grays, charcoals, blacks, with a little bit of browns, beige, and white. And those colors kind of really work really well together, and it's kind of something a little bit new and fresh. And that's why earlier I said never say never, because before I would never recommend a black suit for your first suit, and I'll still stand by that today. Unless it's for like a funeral or a very formal event. But the reason for a black suit is it's just too formal for like that job interview, right? Or if you're just going out and about. But I will recommend a black suit, especially if you do a black suit in some interesting texture. Because a black suit in just a worsted wool looks a little bit too, like nothing really special about it. You could risk looking a little bit plasticky with it. But like, for example, a black linen looks pretty badass. Like I made a black linen suit and I wore the heck out of it this last summer and I love it. I kind of had my eye on like some black corduroy, which I think would be really interesting. I wear black covert trousers quite a bit. So I'll just leave that on, you know, with this menswear journey, never say never. It's just a lot of fun and trial and error, and, you know, guys, have some fun with it. All right, with that, I think we'll just wrap up this video. Thank you so much for watching. I shared a little bit more about myself and who I am. I do want to create a community with you guys. Feel free to leave some comments. I try to reply to most of them, if not all of them. And we'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.